We've hooked up Patrick Star, we've got everything ready. This video is all about making this engine sing. So we might have a couple times of attempting to start it. We'll save you guys those. We're gonna start it and then focus on making some serious power and beautiful sounds. That rev, the air like did this. Like it was like time and space, no joke. This was like wham, wham. It wasn't like a thump in your chest. It was the whole room was just like pressurizing, depressurizing. That was incredible, absolutely incredible. That is one hell of a motor. And we know how to start it now. This is kind of like a repetitive process, but that's what's necessary when there's no like real data about how to do this. The engine wants fuel at certain parts, it does not want fuel at other parts. We've been putting the heat guns onto it. The engine is hot, but it's starting to get cold out here, 56, so it's gonna get worse and worse to try and start this thing. I'm gonna start it with cutting fuel and then introducing fuel. That seems to be the only way it starts right now, which means I can figure out my fueling. So I'm hoping to fire it back up and then run through the last bit of gas, get the engine up to hot enough of a temperature, and then switch over to E85. What came off?
The dry sump belt.
Okay.
It was flopping like crazy.
It had oil pressure the whole time.
When it came off, I stopped you. Right?
Perfect.
I was watching it flap.
Yeah, as soon as you did, I was like, I'm out. That's nasty. That is nasty. Holy shit. My life is not getting any simpler. I have less and less time, and you know what happens when you have less time? You eat worse. The things that are available to you quickly are just not as good as taking time to prepare. But there is a good, simple solution to that problem for me. That is chomps. Well, all of the other snacks out there that used to be something I could trust in, beef jerky and whatnot, look at the labels. For whatever reason, they are adding a lot of sugar to them. Zero sugar. This thing has 10 grams of protein, 100 calories. I can just chomp and go and get focusing back on tuning, whatever the case may be. And of course, it's easy to take anywhere, store, don't have to have a refrigerator. These things are incredible. The proof is in the meat stick. Normally on any product like this, it's gonna be full of that greasiness, and that's just not good. That might be good for this engine, but that's not good for you. The lack of carbs inside of this, the lack of sugars, zero carb, not just zero sugar, zero added sugar, all of those things. This has way less ingredients in it than what you would normally find at a gas station. Well, I personally am thankful that this even remotely exists. Chomps also has tons of other unique flavors. You can spice it up with some jalapeno. They've got some sea salt. They've got choices. If you want to get your Chomps, go to chomps.com/RobDahm15 and use RobDahm15 as the discount code during checkout to get 15% off your order and free shipping. We are starting to get repeatability. Now, mind you, while Tyson has started this engine countless times, he always did it with a carburetor. So this is actually a very monumental motor for all of us, that it's starting on proper fuel injection. Timing it, volumetric efficiency, all of that stuff is all new to this motor. And really, this is kind of the first opportunity to see it run on ethanol as well. That was also something that it never had done. So donated a lot of spark plugs to the cause at this point for making sure that it can make power and not overheat the plugs. And drive it again on pump gas, get it up to temperature, and then pour ethanol into there. As long as it's over E50, which I don't have a flex fuel sensor on this because that wasn't the goal, but as long as it's over that, it's going to be ethanol-based fueling, and we will see what it is. It's going to take more fuel, which is where this thing's going to shine because of the bigger injectors and everything. We're already seeing the turbos spooling. It's ready to go. Like the fact that the turbos are in operating range with a free rev only to 6,000 RPM tells you exactly what this thing's about to do. Holy shit. I'm wet. But that's actually because a proper burn is water, but look at that. My leg's soaked. That is smooth. Fires up immediately. Smooth, 1300 RPM. I'm scared to rev it. I'm not even gonna lie.
How high did you go?
7,000.
Wow.
So, but I let off. We are firing this thing up over and over very quickly. Now that last run was all on gas, trying to honestly use the gas that was in the tank to get us ready for ethanol. So now that it has ethanol, I feel even safer revving it. It was raining. I was like, oh no, oil shooting everywhere. It's water. It's the ethanol is combusting and turning into water. We fired it up the first time on ethanol, and the coolest part was, the Haltech did everything for me, so it makes me look good. But it really is more sensitive to being rich. So it sounds rougher, but there's actually going on is it's dumping so much more fuel that it's actually kind of quenching or cooling off the spark plugs, and then it comes back to life. So what we're gonna do next is go for glory. Since we have oil pressure, everything's looking great, we're gonna go ahead and lean into it. So you're not gonna hear the whop, because that's different than I don't think we'll hear, we might hear a turbo flutter, but I'm just gonna let it tip in and we'll see what we get. We have boost.
Oh, snap.
That's partial throttle. It's building boost. I was babying it. We got a lot of other things to deal with, but that is incredible. So she's this close. The starters were going crazy as always. So it stopped me from really sinking into it. And I'm gonna try again, but it's boosting. This engine is boosting. Oh my God, that was very, very rich. That's so if you hear any of that hesitation, stumbling, that's just certain rotors are just getting way more fuel out of an abundance of caution. But like my blood is vibrating. That was nasty. The dust is clearing and we have a boosted 12 rotor. That was 6 PSI at only 7,700 RPM. No anti-lagging, no nothing. There's a couple rotors running really rich, a couple rotors running really lean because the airflow changes at that point, and this is the first time of doing that. And our manifold is doing well, but not perfect. It doesn't matter. The end result is we have a boosted 12 rotor pretty much ready for the dyno. So the dust has settled, and I was just looking over the logs and everything, and Christian had asked if the wastegate, if the boost gate had opened. I was like, probably not. I mean, we were 5 PSI, blah, blah, blah. You know, I had my reasons. And look at this. That red line is the E-gate's position, and that's 100% here, 0% here. So that E-gate opened up 55% of the way, and we still had 5.5 pounds of boost at 7,500 RPM. This thing's going to make a shit ton of power. The turbo is spinning 47,000 RPM, so 50,000 RPM. These turbos max out at whatever, 79, 80,000 RPM. So we are at 2/3 of the capacity of the turbo on a free rev. Now again, high RPM, it always does that. And like I was telling everybody here, it's gonna go 15 PSI. And so I was kind of surprised it was only 6. There's a reason why. It was bleeding a shit ton of air out of that gate. My gut feeling right now is that it is going to boost creep like a motherfucker, and we can't make little horsepower. So that's gonna it's gonna make the dyno session really, really crazy. To get to this moment, of course, knowing me, you know we had one hell of a journey before it. We were doomed from the start. No, that is not some YouTuber overhyping the whole situation. Had the engine not had the problems that we saw, we would not have survived the dyno, period. There is no way in hell. There were so many small things going on behind the scenes that would have led to catastrophic failure that this fact that we really weren't firing on all rotors actually brought us attention to the things even more. So they are all out here. This video is going to be a fun little thing on a real quick reassembly and get this damn thing running properly for the first time. You guys are probably thinking, oh, the intake manifold blew up. We told you, okay, sure, whatever. That was not meant to survive whatever that was, 200 PSI. No intake manifold should. That has absolutely 0% of relevancy to why we have to tear down the engine. We find out that less than half of the rotors were firing when you heard it fire up for the first time. You know what's better than one starter? 2 starters. You know what's better than 2 starters? 3 starters. And so we are about to machine a 3rd starter into here so it can relieve the tension on each of them, and ultimately we have more batteries. If it was the same number of batteries, it would almost be the same thing. We have extra batteries so we can spin the motor just a little bit faster until Wasp makes a diesel starter or 2. But at this point, we're trying to start shit. That's all we're trying to do, and with that recent explosion, we need to start shit quicker. Goal is to see with 3 starters, no band-aids, no jump packs, just 3 starters, can we get 190 or more RPM?
As an electrical engineer, this usually is not... Oh, this isn't good at all.
We haven't replaced the dust in years. We have changed the ignition cranking angle. So mine was at 3 degrees before it reaches top dead center, and Tyson was saying that a lot of his stuff is 10 to 12, and that stuff almost won't even start, even if the engine's good, with 5 after. We've changed 8 of the spark plugs to my style, which is actually something we were gonna have to do anyway. The style that I have is the strap, and you gap them, and that's for boost. We'll see if that helps. And then we flushed out the fuel system, put in all fresh gas, and we have reduced the amount of premix. And one of the reasons why is that when we pulled the plugs off, the fuel had evaporated, but the premix, the oil, was still on the plug because they had never gotten hot enough. With just those changes, I'm gonna do the first start with No starter fluid. It's just gonna be the engine trying to start as if it started yesterday and today and easily. So we'll see what happens. But this is where the work really gets done. Things are not going the way we hoped they would. Now, this is one of those things where if you want the world record horsepower, you got to do world record work to get that horsepower, and that's exactly what's going on here. Long story short, I noticed that 2 of the 4 rotors on one side were ice cold, no matter what we were doing. I thought at first they were flooded, but they never heated up, so I was like, wow, that's just too consistent. Check the spark plugs, check the coils, check the injectors, everything was fine, so I was like, check the compression. And so every rotor that is firing has 110 psi of compression at 150 RPM. So you guys, rotary guys, know that's a lot of compression. So the problem is the ones that aren't firing have 0. So we have 2 rotors on this very side of the engine, and then all 4 of the rotors on the far side have no compression.
No, one has one.
Oh
face.
yeah. One face, rotor 12, has one face, and that is actually 112 psi of compression, nothing else. And so we spun the engine over by hand, checked all the apex seals, and mind you, E&J and the PTS, all the good seals that I had that were brand new, are on that far side. And so it's like, that's not even remotely possible that those are the problem, but that's the side that they're on. And then some of the ones that were from Tyson's original seals also have no compression. This is like an all or nothing. And so it's kind of impressive, to be honest, after all this frustration of the engine not firing, almost firing, over firing, teasing, is that we are trying to fire it out on half of the rotors, and the other half are just doing whatever, and absolutely nothing to help the cause. So what we're gonna do is what we do best, which is under pressure, solving problems, finding the best solution, blah, blah, blah. It sounds like business bullshit, but the truth is, that's what we gotta do. Tear this all apart, eat some McDonald's, and then see what happened and how do we fix that, and then go to the dyno.
Oh my god.
Go away. You don't want none of this. There we go. That's exactly what I called it.
There, it's all.
It's flat.
That's one piece.
So let's
Cross
look at
there.
this piece.
And this one's good. Look,
Okay.
those all spring loaded still.
Yeah. So that's
And that one's doing it too.
the housing's too narrow for the rotor. That was my biggest fear, and sure enough. Honestly, the coolest part about this is that this is a collection of metal that happens to make a shit ton of power and sound cool. And with that comes the discovery of unique and new things. And so there is a unique part on rotors where it slings the oil. It's this little oil slinger right here. That oil slinger was hitting, the rest of the crank and then just pushing itself. Now it didn't push it enough to run the bearing and spin it, but it certainly put pressure. It was kind of like ramping up. I know from Logan from Defined, you can basically grind those off. We got a little bit of work cut out for us, but it's all stuff we can make happen, and then she goes back together. We are fixing one of the biggest problems, which is these rotors are not side clearanced for this motor. The motor's tighter than a stock motor, and you can actually see where the corner seals or the side seals got pinched because they hit the side of the motor, especially this ring. This ring's really messed up. If that's what happened at idle, it's not gonna make it to high RPM. So what I did is I'm gonna boop it off right here and then machine the whole face down about 5 thousandths. Controversial enough, I'm actually not gonna do the other side because when I went to do the gear side, the gear is hardened and it started shooting sparks as soon as I went to machine it slow. Got this down to 7 minutes. The surface finish is okay, not something I would sell anybody. It just goes in a circle twice. and does what we need to do. Now that that one's done, you can kind of see it looks way worse than it actually is, and I truly mean that. It's very smooth. I'm using the E&J bearing installer to get this done, and it's squaring it off of the bearing, which is nice. But you can see the face turned out really good. 5 thousandths in was enough to get rid of those marks. This ring is actually about down 7 thousandths because it's slightly taller than the rest of the rotor. So I'm just doing, like I said, one side that's a little controversial, I guess. Then we just need to take off all this burr shit. This one is one of the worst rotors. The guys did a good job at getting as much as they could of the side seals out, but they are stuck in there. And so we're gonna take this down 5 thousandths and see if it lets us pop the rest of these out. But look at how bad that one is. This is what, rotor 10, and this row never worked. But look at, you can even see this side hit. I took over 6 thousandths off of it. It's really smooth compared to how it looks. But you see there's no ring there, and it stops there. So now with the material kind of more out of the way, we'll be able to work those over, but there's still spring and shit in there. But I think we'll be able to pop them out. All 12 of the rotors, which don't count them because there's not 12 here, are all clearanced. So I feel very confident that that solved one of the biggest mysteries and problems with the 12 rotor. Not only that, is everything has to be more narrow, not just the rotor, but the apex seal. And I think that Tyson's symptoms that he had over the years with the apex seals bowing is actually because the housings are more narrow than the rotors. One in particular, rotor 10, which took an absolute beating, is the most narrow housing out of all of them. And as a result, you can see it even left damage on this side of the rotor still. So we're leaving that, and I just took it down as I said I would. And so I'm very happy with this. We're actually getting close to packing rotors. We have something that's very, very specific to this motor, and it allows you to make 99% mistakes and 1% of the perfect path. And so in this case, Tyson had machined these O-rings for almost exactly the depth of the O-ring. They're sticking out a couple thousandths. So when you put this plate on top of it, there's a little bit of a lip, and then as the engine pushes down, it would compress those O-rings. So I thought, and actually Tyson thought in the past as well, several times, rightfully, that there will be a gap, not necessarily a air gap, but a gap for fuel to leak from here, because the engine's sitting up here, gravity will pull this, and it'll just start leaking into these areas and become a problem, much less just the leak itself. And so we put RTV, room temperature vulcanizing material, around this, and that's obviously you guys can see that as part of the build series. I did exactly what I thought I would do, which is these O-rings are tall. I put a nice thin but bead. I didn't flatten the bead out, and then put the plate on top of it. That is super, super thin. Or if I was Michael from Vsauce, is it 6 thousandths of an inch, 0.006? Again, not that significant, except here. So what happened is this area is absolutely 6 thousandths taller than the rest of the block. You can actually see what happens. The rotors, we saw this on Tyson's plates, and then we flipped a lot of these plates over because you can use the other side, and you can see most of the plates hit right here, which is a very interesting combination of bad physics, is that this section isn't being supported by the section out here. When we put the plate on, and we'll just pretend we're putting it in, it's pressed all the way around the outer edge, except for here, because this edge you can't wirelessly transmit that force. So everything pushing up on this is able to push up right here. And that's exactly what it did. It springboarded this area up. And if you're thinking, okay, well, Rob, 5 thousandths isn't that big of a deal, you're normally right. But 5 thousandths on both sides, that exceeds the clearance of a stock rotor engine. And this is not a stock rotor engine, so these rotors were already tighter than that. Therefore, the rotor actually got wedged in between those and just crushed everything on the sides. That's why it was so hard for me to spin over initially. And again, I don't know what I don't know. Therefore, I was like, maybe it's okay, maybe it's not, and then it freed up. Fact is, this engine's been dragging, physically dragging, not just dead rotors, but physically metal on metal rotors in the engine. What we're gonna do is use a different material because I still have the same problem of the oil and fuel seeping, as well as another major problem. This lifted this area up again, right? Well, it actually created enough lift off the plate that it wasn't touching this O-ring. Inside of here is oil that is being vacuumed by the bottom of the engine, and then that created enough spacing between all this that it pulled in the little bit of water we had in the engine and sucked it into the oil system. The coolant never got pressurized. That would have shot straight into the oil system, and we would have had water in our oil, and the engine would have nuked itself probably on the very first time of heating up. So, how do we solve all of that? What about Permatex? And I'm going to show you how effective this will be. We're going to take the shit that's on the outside. We're just going to simply press on it. Okay, so we're at 12 thousandths right there. Then I'm going to give it proper pressing. And we're at 2 thousandths. Now if I go really crazy, it ends up, that's 1.5 thou, and we'll pick these up. You can see there really is still a layer. It's actually material. So that's going to massively reduce the pressure put on this area. We're not going to be putting it underneath this little corner here. We're only going to be putting on these sides. Basically this O-ring and this O-ring, and then 2 lines here to complete the seal. That will essentially solve that issue, but we also clearance the rotors, so if it does swell or move, this never happens again. It is time to reassemble this very quickly and very properly, I hope. Joel's gonna set up the cameras, set the mood. He got one of the lights going, but I told him, no, we gotta go quicker. I'm gonna start stacking this plate, and then it's gonna be kind of an assembly line, just-in-time manufacturing. So you economics guys know that, is that instead of having everything ready, I'm gonna have everything getting ready while I'm getting to the next phase, since this motor is a do 3 rotors and you're done. Do 3 rotors and you're done. So it's going to start with this very first piece. I have tons of pieces under here to get this off the ground. What I'm currently doing is just focused on starting here. And we're going to be doing as much as possible to keep this thing flat, polished, and really just ready to turn over. So we'll know as soon as the core block's done, if we can't spin it by hand each of the 3 rows, something's wrong. Step 1 is going to be a little bit different, and this engine might create a new process for us. But this is a high-tech gasket. It's basically Hylamar in a can. Nice and even. So I'm hoping that'll help with evenness, the plate. So I think we're ready to put these O-rings on. Obviously they're going to stay, but it might build up that extra thousandth or whatever to help here. But our biggest area is this one, and you can tell it looks like the machining itself is higher than the spray is. So I'm very, very happy with this. So Tyson made one request, is that I actually use assembly lube when I rebuild it, and I will honor his request, even though you guys know it doesn't need this, but I totally get why. It's all red. These top bits. Hi, today's a good day. Today's a very good day. Ethan just hit me with ice cold statement that if I can get all 12 rotors to sink in, we get crispy critters on him. You know what it is? those are all done. This notch is exactly at top dead center, which is why I'm able to know where the engine is. And then this side also tells you where top dead center is. So we will go ahead. There we go. That was row 1. We are going to take the smooth side of this, place it on top of the rotor. I'm going to be placing rotor 3 the same as I placed rotor 2. Compression towards the top. Oh shit. Scheisse. They're all in. Make sure these 2 stay in, because I believe. It didn't break the glue.
Yeah, I thought it would.
You know, normally does. Boom. Okay, so this would be 9.
That was clean.
Yeah, these guys packed these rotors right.
What'd you forget, Rob?
I didn't forget anything. I was just
Why are
admiring
these
the,
on?
I was admiring the view of, like, what if these plates were on? How would the engine look?
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
And yeah, no, I was gonna put these back on. Okay, we only have 1 rotor left. There we go. Ethan owes us 12, a baker's dozen of donuts. That is, it's kind of Ethan set me up to succeed. Him and Christian both did all the rotor packing for me. We have assembled essentially the 12 rotor, but when you do it this way, the rear plate is the hardest part. And it's actually, now that we know what we're doing, it's gonna be a little bit easier, but we actually have to press the rear parts of the E-shaft into the rear plate with this in the middle. So these are dangling, hanging off of the rear plates, hanging off of the rear things. It's all pressed together, and then we have to like rotate these. It's a little bit of a shit show. Thankfully, this stuff is like, doesn't set up, so we're just gonna spray the back sides of these. This one's kind of layered on, mostly for the obvious bullshit. The hardest piece of the puzzle. Oh no, that's not good. Okay, now the problem is the plate is above this, so I'm gonna have to beat the fuck out of the plate to lower it. Basically pressing it in the bearings.
Knocking the O-ring out of everything.
Yeah. Popping it back up. We already knew this was gonna be a nightmare. This is so difficult. We definitely trashed the 3 bearings on these rotors, and it picked one of the rotors up and dropped all of its shit into the rotor housing. And so this is just almost impossible. That rotor wasn't gonna go down anymore.
It's all one piece.
At this moment.
Friction welded a little bit.
So the rotor is actually fine. It's this, it got stuck into the next bearing. Didn't expect to be disassembling a 12 rotor this quickly.
Apex is coming
There we
with
go.
you.
There we go. Easy peasy.
Yeah, that was boring. This is why I love the guys here. We're all coming up with different ideas. Rob just reminded us that we can get the whole engine assembled like as if there's a 15 rotor. So then we put the plates on top of the rotors, have the E shafts sticking out, and then we put the outer plate on with everything holy hell possible glued to the upside of it, and then hammer that in instead of the E shafts and beating the shit out of the rotors. I was not happy with the motor half hour ago, but I think the guys just did a good job, and we came up with a good solution. And so now I feel really confident to put this motor to the absolute limit. Right, each of us get a hole. Okay, so this has got a sleeve that we're gonna have to actually get onto, and then that sleeve is gonna also have to go down. I'm Rob Dahm, and this is how you assemble a 12 rotor. Oh my god! Wow, that's
That's about as good as it's gonna get without bolts.
Oh, I felt to go down a little bit more. Just give me a all around. Yeah.
Alright. Alright, let's do this. Let's do this. They hammer at the same time and you jump.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
You guys are bad at timing.
I was good at first and...
Yeah. Are we good?
Yeah, we should be good.
The very first thing I want to do. This is just simple, and I can redo this. I just want to see each 4 rotor move.
You're good.
Hell yeah. Okay. Next one. This one rotates the other way. This is a good sign that they're way easier to turn.
Yeah, you're really good there. Yes, sir. It's beautiful.
We have a real 12 rotor now. I think we're good. Yeah, I think we're good. I had like a hour-long clicking montage. If Joel didn't show you that, that's on Joel because it was beautiful. Or he refused to film it, which is some of the most beautiful moments of repetitiveness. We have this thing torqued a little bit less than we did the last time. Not out of a caution, but just being realistic that, okay, this thing doesn't need to be torqued to 38. Instead, I'm doing 30 foot-pounds of torque. And you could really feel that red high Lamar type stuff. You could feel it from the 25 to 30, you could feel movement where it's really squeezing it all out and getting into the crevices, making the motor a fraction of an inch shorter. This is the core of the 12 rotor.
Only cool kids are.
Damn.
This is not coming out.
We have done the impossible, truly. Getting this thing back together, all of it's making sense now, all of it's working. So I feel pretty good. Good enough that what we're about to do right now is just have everything on like normal running and just turn it over for the first time. Well, there we go. That sounded sick.
This sounded so much different.
Totally different than before. That is the triple turbo 12 rotor. We've been through ups and downs, but I'll tell you what, it is ready for the dyno. Now, I know that there are those of you that say, hey, this thing's never gonna actually make power and it's never gonna be put in anything. Well, I'll tell you what, you are wrong. Now, we're gonna have to take some stuff off to make this thing fit through the door frame at the dyno, but at the end of the day, it's gonna make a lot of power. How much power do you guys think that this thing's gonna make?